we hear the most contorted and grotesque fairy tales about how a handful of billionaires and their sycophants are going to solve the security crisis in Northeast Asia. But the security crisis we keep being reminded of is that of North Korea's nuclear weapons, something treated as if it's unrelated to the blatant violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty by the United States in its failure to destroy its own cache and in its announcement of a $1 trillion plan for the development of next-generation nuclear weapons. But anyone who experienced July of 2018 in Seoul or in Tokyo knows that the overwhelming security threat for this region is not an attack from North Korea or the construction of Chinese artificial islands in the South China Sea. The security threat, so devastating in scale as to force us to rethink the basic assumptions of our economy and of our culture, cannot be named, it cannot be addressed, and it cannot be responded to. Moreover, it cannot be stopped with fighter planes or with missile defense, even as it takes the lives of hundreds and thousands in East Asia, and soon to be many times that amount. Our newspapers, our politicians, our so-called leaders pretend that it does not exist. The temperatures in Seoul and Tokyo this July were unprecedented, perhaps since the Permian extinction. And this heat wave, which kills the poor, the working class, and the ill disproportionately, came on top of unprecedented floods in western Japan that have killed some 200 people. This situation is better, in fact, than in many other countries. The news is filled with startling episodes related to the weather, but it offers no analysis. And so the greetings exchanged between people meeting in Seoul have become, "It's so hot these days. I wonder why." Almost without exception, the media explains nothing about the cause of this crisis or about its relationship to the industrialized society that we have embraced. But they all know the cause of this heat wave that is killing people. They all know the reason for the floods and the spreading deserts. The situation is going to get much, much worse. We keep this dark secret to ourselves while youth are encouraged to indulge in idle pleasures of the moment. Our civilization, one that is based on the substitution of coal and petroleum for human and animal labor, has ended in a complete failure, and radical change is demanded immediately. We are seeing around us the signs of rapidly progressing climate change. The warming of our air, the death of our oceans, the spread of deserts all around us, and finally, the impending collapse of the modern agricultural system on which we depend. We do not want to know that every time we turn on a light, every time we check our messages, every time we use an electric fan, we are digging our own graves. But the science shows what is happening to our environment very clearly through such carbon emissions and the destruction of forests and of the soil and of the water. We can expect things to get much worse, and so we must entirely restructure our cities, completely rethink our energy policy. We must rethink trade, growth, and all of our assumptions. What will be the solution? At present, in the face of death and destruction, there is almost no serious thought going on at all. No halfway carbon trading or solar power on the side proposals will save us. How many tens of thousands must die before we start to act? Does the cost of basic foods have to triple or quadruple or go up 10 or 20-fold before we recognize that there is a crisis? Must our children live in a constant fear about the bitter future we are hiding from them? Perhaps we can feel grateful that the Trump administration is no longer threatening to destroy North Korea. But the word climate change, the greatest threat in our history, has been eliminated from the media and from the government discussion in the United States. And many countries have followed suit. The interests of coal and oil tycoons are the highest priority in Washington, D.C., and the pathological drive for the destruction of our civilization is on. We must adopt the equivalent of a wartime economy overnight, full mobilization, and to do so through close cooperation globally and the highest level of bravery and of moral commitment. When I say wartime economy, I do not mean that we need to gear up for a war. Quite the opposite. I mean we must shut down weapons factories and dedicate that expertise to the response to climate change. Yet the reference to war is not entirely superfluous. This fight against vested interests that make many, many billions of dollars of revenue by keeping us hooked on petroleum, by encouraging a superficial culture of consumption and waste, is a fight that will require tremendous moral courage at every turn. Let us go back to the vision of the four freedoms put forth by an American president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in his State of the Union address of January 6, 1941. That speech was the start of the move towards a global system established later under the United Nations Charter in 1945, which has since gone terribly off course. Roosevelt's most important point in his speech was his declaration of four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Roosevelt was not ambiguous about the meaning of these four freedoms. He stated, "In future days, which we shall seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon four essential human freedoms. The first is freedom of speech and expression, everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world. The third freedom is freedom from want, which translated in world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants, everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which, translated in world terms, means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor, anywhere in the world. The fight against climate change today is even more daunting and even more dangerous than the fight against fascism in the 1940s. It will require at least as much clarity of vision, as much self-sacrifice, and as great a concern for society as a whole and for our whole earth, and as much struggle and as many painful decisions. It will also require a fifth freedom, freedom from pollution, to say that no one has the right to pollute the air, to pollute the water, to pollute the precious planet that we all share. I call upon all of you, the people of East Asia, of the United States, and the citizens of our precious earth to rise to this occasion without hesitation.